matter is not addressed in a reasonable way in the interest of all Antiguans and Barbudans, we will elevate the issue. So I want to say here to the Honourable Member for Rural West, try and save your government the trouble, because we're not going to relent in this issue. And I see that the member is very cavalier about it. See, Madam Speaker, that the Honourable Prime Minister, the member for Rural West, is not committed to the principles of good governance. And I know at some point in this Honourable House, I'll hear members on the other side speaking about issues of transparency and accountability. But, Madam Speaker, what is happening here is that we are testing their commitment to good governance. And I guarantee you that they will fail miserably this evening, because at the end of the day, they see this issue as an exclusively partisan issue, when it's a national issue that is impacting on the lives of the people of this country. Madam Speaker, if the $50 million that was overspent at the stadium was available to the Treasury, perhaps a housing project could be built in City West for the people down there. They need proper houses. Madam Speaker, it could have been utilized for the opening of Mount St. John. This is not a small issue. This is a fundamental governance issue. And I just hope that the Honourable Member for St. John's Rural West will stop treating this issue in a frivolous way, and to understand that if indeed he is committed to the issues of transparency and accountability, that he will do something about it. Appoint an independent commissioner or group of commissioners to deal with this issue. Because again, if you have nothing to hide, then you should not worry about the outcome. And if it is just to appease a portion of the population that there was no wrongdoing, I believe, Madam Speaker, that it would have been monies well spent. And I cannot support this cavalier manner in which the Honourable Prime Minister is dealing with this issue. Call inquiry. And if you don't call inquiry, trust me, this issue going right into the elections. Because, you know, Madam Speaker, I half suspect that they are perhaps worried about dealing with this issue because it is indicative of corruption within the UPP. And notice I said indicative. And I want to say here that we will not be guided by the actions or the inaction of members of the UPP. So, by ignoring this call for an independent inquiry to the issue, it will not go away. And let me say this too. When we win the next general elections, we will call inquiry. And I also want to say here, you may be better advised, through you, Madam Speaker, you may be better advised to call the inquiry now and manage it. Because when we call it, when we win the next general elections, rest assured, Madam Speaker, heads will roll. Heads will roll. It's $50 million we're talking about here. That was overspent at the stadium. Now, Madam Speaker, in summing up, I want to say here, or I want to reiterate the call for a public inquiry into the spending at Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, and I'm calling upon the UPP government, the Honourable Prime Minister and his ministers, to do so, not necessarily because of our call, but to do so, Madam Speaker, in the interest of transparency and accountability, in the interest of good governance. And let me say this to Madam Speaker, we have had several pickets on several occasions. We have had up to 200, 300 people on the road. And you have to understand a picket, you know, not a march, not a public demonstration, a picket. And during the hours, Madam Speaker, when people have to work, and if that is not demonstrable of public interest in this issue, why, Madam Speaker, isn't this member, the Honourable Member for Rural West, responding to the request? And I want to say, you ignore this issue at your own peril. And I hope that the people of this country are listening. And I hope that they will listen very keenly. And I want to say to the nation, tune out when they talk about former government. They'll be not in power now. But what they normally do, you know, Madam Speaker, when you put their stewardship on their microscope, they run to the former government rhetoric. Farmer government. You're all in power for 4 years. The farmer government you're telling us about. Madam Speaker, I served in government. At no point did I mention anything about farmer PLM government. So I want to tell you on the other side, we're not accepting a farmer government rhetoric today. Give an account of your stewardship. Tell us about your role in this ripoff, which has been the single largest ripoff in the history of this country. Tell us about that. And Madam Speaker, in closing, I just want to say here too that there are the issues in terms of full transparency and the open and equitable distribution of government's procurement contracts to avert distortion of competition. Make sure that you put systems in place so that the entire population can benefit. Not that you're going to choose a few friends and cronies and allow them to make millions of dollars when you have others out there who are more capable, who are excluded. Put systems in place so that you have a more efficient governance framework, a more efficient government, better management of public resources, and as a consequence, more resources available to the people of this country, including the poor and the vulnerable. With those words, Madam Speaker, I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. John's Rural North. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, that's right. We need a seconder. I'm sorry.
Madam Speaker, I support the motion.
Honourable members, please.
I support the motion, Madam Speaker, and reserve my right to speak later.
Thank you. Honourable member for St. John's Rural North, are you still interested? You acknowledge.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after a long listen from the Honourable Member for St. John's City West. Yes, Madam Speaker, how much time are you allowing so that I can get to my point?
You have an hour.
Pardon me?
1 hour.
1 hour. I don't think I'll need that, Madam Speaker, because I am going to deal with just a specific part of the issue. But, Madam Speaker, I want to start by a quote from Proverbs 14, chapter 6. And, Madam Speaker, it says, "A mocker seeks wisdom and never finds it, but knowledge comes easily to those with understanding." Madam Speaker, I want to read it again for the member for City West. "A mocker seeks wisdom and never finds it." 14 verse 6. "But knowledge comes easily to those with understanding." So, Madam Speaker, we on this side this evening are going to give the member from City West and the colleagues on the other side some understanding of how projects and how our involvement in Cricket World Cup is. Madam Speaker, there's so many issues that he brought up in his presentation, of rambling, of all sorts of things that, as a politician, it's very hard not to get into the politics right away. But my role is to talk very quickly about World Cup Antigua and its involvement, and where our involvement started in Cricket World Cup 2007. And, Madam Speaker, the commitment to become involved in Cricket World Cup predated the United Progressive Party. During the Antigua Labour Party administration time, I travelled as part of a team, paid my own way, they wouldn't fund me, to go to St. Lucia as part of a working group to make our commitment. During that time, Madam Speaker, what was being negotiated was a document called the Host Venue Agreement. And that Host Venue Agreement is a document that outlined and guided our involvement in Cricket World Cup 2007. And, Madam Speaker, as a result of us signing that Host Venue Agreement, which each territory had to sign, certain commitments were made. Not unique to the Antigua government, but to the Barbados government, Jamaica, everybody who was hosting had to sign a Host Venue Agreement. And in that agreement, certain commitments were made. So one of those commitments was that a local organizing committee needed to be formed. World Cup Antigua was incorporated as a limited liability company on April 20th of 2004. In accordance with the laws of Antigua and Barbuda, and commenced operation on September 15th, 04.